In history, few connections seem as improbable as the one between an ancient Egyptian battle involving cats and the megachurches of the 21st century. Yet, as we'll discover, history is full of surprising links, waiting to be unraveled by those willing to look beyond conventional narratives. And this is a tale of how a clever military tactic involving cats sets off a chain of events that would ultimately shape religious practices in the 21st century. Our story begins in 525 BC on the sun-baked plains of Pelusium, a strategic fortress city guarding Egypt's eastern frontier. And the Egyptian army, led by Pharaoh Psamtik III, stood ready to defend their homeland against the invading Persian forces commanded by Cambyses II. Now, on paper, the Egyptians had the advantage: superior numbers, intimate knowledge of the terrain, and the defensive fortifications of Pelusium itself. There is no reason they should lose the battle to come. However, they were about to face an enemy armed with an unexpected weapon: cats. The reverence for cats in ancient Egyptian culture is hard to overstate. These creatures were not merely pets, they were considered divine embodiments of the goddess Bastet. Killing a cat, even accidentally, was a crime punishable by death. And so a small cultural quirk was about to play a pivotal role in one of the most important battles in ancient history. Cambyses II, the Persian leader, was known for his military acumen, but his strategy at Pelusium was innovative, to say the least. Understanding the Egyptian veneration of cats, he had his soldiers paint images of Bastet on their shields. But he didn't stop there. In a move bordering on psychological warfare, he had his troops carry live cats into battle. Imagine the scene: the Persian army advancing, their shields adorned with feline imagery, and in their hands a battalion of squirming cats. The Egyptian archers, poised to rain down arrows on the invaders, suddenly found themselves in an impossible situation. Because to shoot at the Persians meant risking harm to the sacred cats, an act that went against everything they believed. The moment of hesitation was all the Persians needed. They pressed their advantage, breaking through the Egyptian lines and securing a decisive victory. Pelusium fell, and with it, Egypt came under Persian rule. Now, the fall of Pelusium was more than just a military victory, because it was a pivotal moment that altered the course of ancient history. With Egypt under their control, the Persians became the dominant power in the Near East. And this would set the stage for their eventual conquest of Babylon in 539 BC, an event that would have far-reaching consequences for religious history. But before we jump to Babylon, let's consider the wider implications of the Persian conquest of Egypt. This wasn't just a change in political leadership. It represented a significant cultural shift. See, the Persians, unlike many conquerors before and after them, they were known for their relatively tolerant approaches to the religions and customs of conquered people. The Persian policy of religious tolerance is going to play a crucial role in our story, because it allowed for the preservation, and in some cases, the flourishing of diverse religious traditions within the empire. This cultural environment would in the end prove to be fertile ground for religious innovation and adaptation, factors that would become incredibly important as we'll see our narrative unfold. In 539 BC, the Persian king Cyrus the Great, he turns his attention to Babylon, the last great power standing in the way of Persian dominance in the region. The conquest of Babylon was swift and decisive, marking the end of the Neo-Babylonian Empire and the beginning of the Persian Empire over the entire Near East. But it's what happened after the conquest that truly changed the course of history. Cyrus, continuing the Persian tradition of religious tolerance, made a decision that would have a profound implication for the future of religious practice. He allowed the Jewish exiles in Babylon to return to their homeland and rebuild their temple in Jerusalem. Now, this might seem like a minor footnote in the grand scheme of imperial politics, but its impact cannot be overstated. The Jewish exile in Babylon had lasted for decades. It forced the Jewish people to adapt their religious practices to life without their central temple. In this period of adaptation, it gave rise to a new institution that would change the very face of religious practice: the synagogue. The development of the synagogue was nothing short of revolutionary. Prior to the Babylonian exile, Jewish religious life, it centered around the temple in Jerusalem. Sacrifices, rituals, major festivals, all took place at the temple under the guidance of a priesthood. But in Babylon, far from their homeland and without the access to the temple, the Jewish exiles had to find new and innovative ways to maintain their religious identity and practices. The synagogue emerged as a solution to this challenge. These were local gathering places where Jews could come together for prayer, study, and community activities. The synagogue, it represented a radical departure from the centralized priesthood-led model of the temple. It was democratic in nature, required no special class of religious functionaries, and any learned member of the community could lead prayers or provide instruction. And this shift from a hierarchical-based, sacrifice-focused religion to a more egalitarian, study-based model would have profound implications for the future of not just Judaism, but religious practice as a whole. So when Cyrus allowed the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, they also brought this new model of religious organization with them. Now, the synagogue didn't replace the temple. Sacrificial worship resumed once the second temple was built, but it coexisted alongside the synagogue. And the synagogue model proved remarkably resilient and adaptable. In AD 70, the second temple was destroyed by the Romans. It's an event that could have spelled the end of Judaism as a religion, but instead, the synagogue becomes the primary form of Jewish communal organization in the diaspora. And the flexibility of the synagogue model, it allowed Judaism to survive and even thrive in diverse cultural contexts. Whether in Babylon, Egypt, Rome, medieval Europe, Jews could establish synagogues as centers of religious life and community. The adaptability ensured the continuity of Jewish practice and identity despite centuries of dispersion and persecution. But the influence of the synagogue didn't stop with Judaism. As we'll see, this model of religious organization is going to have a profound impact on the development of other religious traditions, particularly Christianity. The early Christian movement, it emerged from Jewish roots, and it's no surprise that early Christian communities adopted many aspects of synagogue organization and practice. The Christian church in early days, it looked a lot more like a synagogue than a temple. And like the synagogue, early Christian churches were community gatherings, places for prayer, study, and mutual support, often housed in private houses or repurposed buildings. And much like the early synagogues, the leadership structure of these early churches with elders and overseers and bishops had more in common with synagogue organization than with the hereditary priesthood of the temple. Even the format of Christian worship services, it bears a striking resemblance to the synagogue services. Both included readings from Scripture. They both had a sermon or a teaching and communal prayers. And this similarity was so strong that for the first few decades of its existence, Christianity was seen by many as simply another sect of Judaism. And as Christianity spread beyond its Jewish roots and into the Gentile world, it retained many of these synagogue-inspired features. The idea of regular communal gatherings for worship and instruction, the emphasis of scriptural study, and the notion of a local religious community, all these core elements of Christian practice, they owe their debt to the synagogue model. Now, as we fast forward through history, we can trace the continued influence of this synagogue-inspired model of religious organization. The Protestant Reformation, with its emphasis on scriptural study and more democratic forms of church governance, can be seen as a return to some of these early church and, by extension, synagogue practices. But it's in the modern megachurch movement that we see some of the most interesting echoes of the ancient synagogue. The megachurch phenomenon began to take shape in the United States in the late 20th century, and is defined as Protestant churches with a regular weekly attendance of 2,000 or more people. And megachurches represented a significant shift in the religious landscape of America. At first glance, these large and often technologically advanced churches, they might seem very far removed from the humble synagogues of ancient Babylon. However, if you look closer, you're going to notice some striking similarities. The first is community focus. Like synagogues, megachurches emphasize community gatherings and learning. They often feature small group meetings alongside larger services, which shows the dual nature of synagogue life with its communal prayer and study sessions. The second similarity is multifunctional spaces. Many megachurches have moved away from the ornate, temple-like architecture in favor of more functional spaces that can accommodate various community activities. And this mirrors the multi-purpose nature of ancient synagogues, which served as schools, courts, and community centers, in addition to houses of worship. And then regular attendance, the emphasis on regular attendance and community involvement in megachurches echoes the synagogue model, where weekly Sabbath attendance was, and still is, the norm. And then leadership role. The role of the megachurch pastor as a teacher and community leader rather than a sacerdotal figure, it has more in common with a rabbi than with a temple priest. And this reflects the shift from a sacrificial, priest-led religion to a teaching-based model that began with the synagogue. And then adaptability. Like the ancient synagogues, which allowed Judaism to thrive in diverse cultural contexts, megachurches have shown a remarkable ability to adapt to changing social and cultural norms while maintaining their core religious identity. So here we are, having traced an unlikely path from a battle involving cats in ancient Egypt to the megachurches of modern America. It's a journey that encompasses Persian military tactics, Jewish exile and return, the evolution of religious institutions, and the adaptive nature of human spirituality. This narrative, it challenges us to reconsider the connections between seemingly unrelated historical events, the Persians' clever use of cats that didn't just win them a battle, but it set in motion a chain of events that would shape religious practice for millennia. But let's tug just a little bit more on this historical thread, the butterfly effect in history. The Battle of Pelusium demonstrates how seemingly small factors, in this case the Egyptian reverence for cats, can have an outsized impact on historical events. This butterfly effect is a recurring theme in history and reminds us that major changes often have unlikely origins. Two is cultural factors and military strategy. The Persian tactic at Pelusium highlights the importance of understanding and leveraging cultural factors in military and political strategy. This lesson remains relevant today in our globalized world, where cultural intelligence can be as crucial as traditional forms of military intelligence. And then adaptability is a key to survival. The synagogue's evolution and enduring influence demonstrates the power of adaptability in ensuring the survival and relevance of religious and cultural traditions. And this principle extends beyond religion, applying to any institution or idea that desires to stand the test of time. And then the unintended consequences of tolerance. The Persian policy of religious tolerance, which allowed for the return of the Jewish exiles, had far-reaching consequences that its architects could have never foreseen. And this serves as a reminder that policies of openness and tolerance can lead to cultural cross-pollination and innovation in unexpected ways. And then the power of decentralized models. The success and influence of the synagogue model highlights the strength of decentralized, community-based organizations. And this principle has had implications not just for religious institutions, but for social and political organizations as well. And then the persistence of foundational ideas. The echoes of synagogue organization and megachurches demonstrates how foundational ideas can persist, but they resurface in new forms. And this might suggest that studying ancient models could provide insights into many contemporary phenomena. So from ancient Egypt to modern America, we're left with the perspective, the complexity and interconnectedness of history, and what seemed at first glance to just be a simple story of a clever military tactic. It unfolded into cultural exchange, religious innovation, and institutional evolution. And the narrative challenges us to look beyond simple cause and effect explanations and to consider the complex web of influences that really shape historical events. It invites us to reconsider our understanding of religious history, not as a series of isolated developments, but as a continual process of adaptation and reinterpretation. Moreover, it serves as a powerful reminder of the often overlooked impact of cultural factors on major historical events. The Egyptian reverence for cats, seemingly minor cultural quirk, played a crucial role in a battle that changed the course of history. In the end, this unlikely journey from the battlefields of Pelusium to the megachurches of suburban America, it teaches us an important lesson. In history, as in life, everything is connected. And so the flap of a cat's tail in 525 BC might just have shaped the Sunday morning experience of millions of Americans today. So the next time you drive past a megachurch, spare a thought for those ancient Egyptian cats. They may have had more of a hand or a paw in shaping our religious landscape than we ever imagined. And remember, history is full of such unexpected connections waiting to be discovered by those willing to look beyond the obvious and connect the dots across time and space.